Hey Raghunath, tell everyone about our Patreon community.
Sure, Kastuba. The Wisdom of the Sages Patreon community is an incredible online yoga resource. If you like the type of yoga wisdom and culture we share on the show, then our Patreon community is a great next step. This is a listener-supported podcast, and any level of sponsorship will unlock a wide range of live and archived classes, talks, and even workshops.
Raghunath teaches, I teach, and we have a host of other excellent teachers on topics ranging from yoga philosophy, asana classes, storytelling, Ayurveda, kirtan, cooking, meditation, and a lot more.
We even have an incredible online Bhakti 12-step recovery group.
So if you want to check it out, go to patreon.com/wisdom of the sages.
All right, let's get it on.
Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Live from Super Soul Farm, this is Wisdom of the Sages, a daily yoga podcast with your host Raghunath and co-host and senior educator at the Bhakti Center in New York, Kastuba Das. Welcome to the show, everybody. Welcome to Sleeping Sunday. It seems like people, Mara, have slept in because there's not that many people live today. There's only 40 people.
An extra sleeping.
What's that?
They're sleeping an extra because they already sleep until 8, but nobody's here at 8 even.
Well, it's
They're
8
still
o'clock
sleeping.
now, isn't it?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying is they're still sleeping.
And they're still sleeping. Well, you know, Saturdays are hard sometimes for people, but
It's Sunday though.
yeah, okay, you got no excuse, people. What the heck is going on with our audience? We used to have them up at 5 a.m. They were very disciplined in the old days, and then sleeping Saturday, they were like, "Oh, thank God, okay, we're gonna do this." But now it's like this is it describes parenting. You give them too much slack, they take advantage of you. Note this down, parents. Kastuba's here, but he's just witnessing. He's doing his puja in the upper corner. He's just giving a little namaste because today is special guest day. We've got a great guest, Partha-sarathi. He's got very interesting stories about being an active soldier and a devotee, and how he had that how he was with near-death experiences on a regular basis. So before we invite him on, Miss Mare, any announcements today?
Yeah, we have Bhakti recovery group meetings today at 9:30 a.m. and 7:30 p.m. and Bhakti Center's Urban Davy at 11 a.m. today.
Okay, great. Lori and Brian were with us last night. Lori, Brian, want to say anything about last night? You good? You inspired? Want to share? We had a great kirtan last night at Jai Yoga in Albany. Jai Yoga. Hi, Lori. If you're on Zoom, you regularly know Lori's smiling face because her and Brian are here every day. They never miss a show. Did you have a good time last night?
It was fantastic. Jai Yoga School is such a beautiful place, and to see like old friends from either Indian pilgrimage or GEV, and Kirtan was fabulous with Prabhu here and his son Rocco and Maya and Patrick. It was just ecstatic.
We had a great crew, wasn't it? And it was. I agree. Like Dustin and Meg, you know, they've been to India with me a few times actually, and they have this beautiful community. I'm glad we got to go up there. Brian, you got any realization? Look at this guy, Brian. Also in the Army. Speaking of Navy, sorry.
It was great. No, it was a fantastic time.
What are your realizations about kirtan in general?
So kirtan, actually, it just brings everybody together. Even if you're just there as a spectator. I have nothing to do with any of this. I'm just here to support my wife or my husband. Next thing you know, those little thumbs start tapping. You start clapping. You get that little fullness in your heart.
Yeah, everyone's nodding their head on Zoom.
Before you know it, you're on YouTube because somebody's videoing you dancing with your arms in the air. Right?
Yeah, so
you all know what I'm talking about.
It reminds me of Sachi Sutta one day, got videotaped in an ecstatic dance. And I was like, what the heck? Sachi Sutta is an ecstatic dance?
Yeah. It was a beautiful studio. They've done such a great job. And it was a pretty full house, and everybody was singing, everybody, even the little kids. So
Yeah.
it
It's
was,
so kid friendly. Kids are just dancing around the room. It's like it wasn't like
Yeah.
that when I went to church. Church
right.
was very solemn.
Yeah.
Even at the folk mass that I went to, where they tried to like, okay, we're gonna tone this down. People aren't showing up anymore. Let's bust out some acoustic guitars. And that was sort of like a little looser. You could dress a little bit more relaxed, but still it had a element of you know, type of sort of like subdued goodness mixed with gravity.
Right.
Yeah. Anyway, I'm glad you guys are here. These guys are up here doing save up. We're preparing for the Wisdom of the Sages weekend. I don't know if there's any spots left, but email the website wisdomofthesages108@gmail.com. Thank you guys.
All right. Thank you.
Love having these guys around. So we're going to bring in our guest unless there's any more announcements. Last call for Italy. That's all I'm going to say. Last call for Italy. You want to go with us to Italy? You can do it. But first, I want to bring in an old friend of mine, Partha-sarathi. Welcome to the show.
Hey, how's it going? Hare Krishna.
Good. Hare Krishna. Partha-sarathi's in right outside of Amsterdam now, right?
Yeah, in a really nice area. It's away from the city.
Yeah. Prabhu is I've known him since his brahmachari days, monk days. Now he's an endurance athlete. And on his trip to Bhakti, you were deployed twice in the Iraq
No,
War.
I was in Iraq for 5 years, like basically 3 tours there, and then I had 3 tours in the Balkans as well during the genocide period.
Oh God. Anyway, we'll get to that. So first of all, welcome to the podcast. And I'm glad we reconnected. We just randomly started talking to each other again. And I know he's an interesting guy with some interesting realizations. And, I think also one thing that we had in our conversation was the ups and downs of practicing bhakti for many years. Oftentimes people think, I'm going to open the bhakti door and it's just going to be blissful. But there's so many twists and turns in your bhakti life. Also, some people that you depend on let you down, or something happened or some weird thing that situation that maybe broke your heart or something, or you had some personal struggles. And so our bhakti path is generally not a straight line. But I think when we were speaking the other day and you went through some twists and turns, we won't get into it now, but I was thinking, yeah, he had so many twists and turns, but here he is, a few decades later, and you're still playing the game. And that's quite beautiful to witness, because it's not like the materialist doesn't get twists and turns in their life. Everybody's getting a twist. No one gets a pass from pain, from the reversals of life, from your heartbreak, from people letting you down, from false hopes, etc. So I'm so good to see you here with a strong focus and keeping the main thing, Prabhu.
Yeah, I mean, it's like that. The whole idea of spirituality or Krishna consciousness or, bhakti yoga is that each of these difficulties, each of these obstacles, each of these turns in the road, it just gives us another chance to actually internalize our whole spirituality, right? Like, because otherwise it's just a theoretical knowledge if you can't actually apply it to yourself until you search within yourself. It's just theoretical. Like, how can I get past all of these anarthas in the heart, all these really deep-seated, unwanted aspects, unless you're confronted by them? Then advancement can't come.
Exactly. I did this whole thing on forgiveness. I do this thing called the 6 pillars of bhakti yoga. And one is the importance of not taking offense to other people. So about forgiveness. And whenever I make some declaration like, you must forgive, I feel like Krishna directly sends me a person to screw with me. And then then I'm just like, okay. And I'm trying to theoretically write something, but at the same time, I have this person who's driving me insane. And then I have to sort of, whenever we make that step up, like I'm going to go to the next level in bhakti, I'm going to take this theory and claim that I am this theory and I should tell everybody else about this wonderful theory, then I get challenged with that very declaration in my own life. And exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I had that also where I felt that I didn't appreciate the Vaishnavas anymore. I didn't appreciate the devotees anymore. So,
that's a phase. That's a phase. When you've been around, you really appreciate them. And then you go through this phase like, oh, I'm sick of these guys. They don't have their act together.
Yeah, but I took it as an extreme because I'm an extreme type of person. And so then I took a vow for 12 years to stay away from them and to just practice on my own, praying all that time that love for them comes back again. And only then will I come back into association when I feel that feeling has entered the heart of appreciation, of wanting to see them, to wanting to associate with them. And only then will I come back into the association. When it's like when you're in the desert and somebody offers you a piece of stale bread and some water, it's the greatest thing in the world. So it was kind of like this meditation of being in the desert of suffering, and just when I was starving to death, taking whatever morsel I can get and be appreciative of it.
Nice. How did that work out?
It was actually amazing. I felt like, not that I would go back fully into constant association, but it taught me a lesson that a lot of the times it's our ego or our own stuff that keeps us from wanting to see the good in others. It's actually just us and what we feel and what we see and how we take things.
I think that's an important section, a season of some of us life, mine included, which is where you step away from the association of devotees. And then there's that re-romancing Krishna, like you did when you were a brand new devotee. And I went through that phase too, where I was like, okay, I've been out of Krishna consciousness for, I went through like a 3-year stale period where I just wasn't living up to the integrity I wanted to live. And I couldn't even, it's humiliating to say, but I couldn't even call myself a devotee because I didn't want to seem like a hypocrite. So I just considered myself, you know what, I'm just not a devotee. And then Krishna kept on sending me devotees who would be like, what do you mean you're not a devotee? Of course you're a devotee. You just, but still I kept my distance. And then I got to this point where I was like, you know what? I want the association of devotees, but not too much. So I got an apartment. I wanted to get an apartment near the LA temple. And I had like 5 apartments to choose from. And all of them were like 4 blocks away from the LA temple, except one was right across the street. And all of them fell through except the one right across the street. And I was like, okay, this is Krishna's plan. And it was the best plan that ever happened. So Krishna gives us, he lets the leash go as much as we want to go. And then he pulls us back as much as we want to go back.
Well, I also think it's a matter of honesty, right? Like Krishna doesn't need your boga. Krishna doesn't need your, puja. Only thing Krishna wants is honesty and love. And I feel like once I never went through that period where I gave up Krishna consciousness. I just worshipped my Giriraj on my own. I chanted by myself. I read by myself. I just created this internal desire and motivation. But the one thing I focused on was to be honest and say, these are my faults. This is the good. This is the bad. I accept you. You accept me. And then it becomes a healthy relationship, which I feel is necessary. You have to have a healthy relationship. It can't be built on guilt. It can't be built on fear. It has to be built on genuine honesty and love.
I love that. It had to do a lot with one of our questions yesterday. A person also struggling with the association, not necessarily struggling with Krishna, but just happy with where they're at, but no intense urgency to get any deeper than he was. But thank you for sharing that. So what was your initial stage of coming to Bhakti? How did you first find Krishna in your life? And what were you into? And how did Krishna answer those prayers?
Well, I grew up in New York in the 80s and the 90s riding BMX. I printed the first T-shirts for Murphy's Law at a bike shop with my friend Luigi. Same thing with like Biohazard, like the first Biohazard shirts. Like we printed them in a bike shop I worked at when I was like 12 or 13 years old or something. So I knew of like hardcore, I knew of these things. I was into punk. But then fast forward when I joined the military, yeah, it wasn't until 1999 when I was guarding a mass grave site in Kosovo that I started to have questions about the world and what does the world mean or what is the goal of it. And just by some instance, because I was straight edge, somebody sent me a book that was a conversation with you and Satyaraj. And then that kind of
Sure, that was a book that I released, a conversation book.
Yeah,
which is sort of out of print right now with Satyaraj Prabhu, who's one of my initial mentors in Bhakti, and
that kind of put me on the path. And then, coming back from that deployment, that's when I really decided to, even though I was still in the army, I decided that's it. This is what I want to do. I want to just dive into this process because it made sense. Like the Bhagavad Gita is an amazing book. Every answer in life can be explained in the Bhagavad Gita. Karma, why we suffer, what's the goal of life, just everything is there in the Bhagavad Gita. And so that really kicked it off where I was living in Germany at the time, stationed there, and that's when I joined the temple. And I just lived this dual life of being a devotee and then at the same time being in the military.
Hold it. You joined the temple while you're still you mean you didn't live in the temple?
Yeah, I lived in the temple as much as possible. So
you lived, but you were still like living at the army camp.
Yeah, I would walk around the army base in like Dodi and with T-Lock and like and then I wasn't the whole time I was in the military as a Vaishnava, I never hit it. Like when later in my career when I was a senior ranking, I would worship Shalagram there in front, right there on tops of vehicles or at my desk in my office.
The Shalagram is the stones from the Gandaki River in Nepal, which can be worshipped as Lord Vishnu or Lord Krishna. So you had these Shalagrams with you while you were.
Yeah. So I didn't I never kind of shied away. I just said no, Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, it's better to do one's nature imperfectly than another nature perfectly. So wow. I had this nature to be a soldier. I was quite good at it. I was quite technically and tactically sound at it. So I thought, well, okay, then just do it, but don't hide who I am actually. So I would, instead of taking 30 days leave and going to visit my parents, I would go on traveling Sankirtan for a month. And I would just, that's like my whole life was just that.
Traveling Sankirtan means you jump in a van with a bunch of other guys and you distribute books on the streets of whatever, Germany, Eindhoven, Hamburg.
So that was just how it was. It just was an integrated part of my life. It was you wake up, you do Mangal Arati, and then you go to the army and do physical training and then start your day. And then at the end, you go back to the temple.
Wait a second. So you had Mangal Arati at the temple or at the army base? I'm just trying to get my head around this.
At the temple. At the temple, most of the time I had it at the temple. And
where was this?
In Nuremberg, Germany. So I was in Bamberg, which was only about an hour away by car. So I would go to the temple and then I would come back and then I would just do the army all day. And then in the evening, I would go back to the temple if time allowed due to field problems or other things that were going on. But for the most part, that's what any waking moment I was there staying in the temple.
Wow. I'm trying to just get my head around the type of people in the army. I don't want to make a generalization, but it doesn't seem like they're the most embracing group for a white guy walking around in a dhoti at the army at the base camp. How did your fellow soldiers look at you, treat you? Were they like, oh, pretty cool? Or to me, being in the army reminds me of probably something was like in junior high school where you get a bunch of bullies picking on you, making fun of you, and you have to defend yourself. And what was it like though, actually?
I mean, for me, it wasn't so bad. I mean, again, I wasn't like a private. I was already a NCO, so like I was already in charge of people. So nobody ever treated me bad. They always gave me, tons of facility. Like when I was in Iraq, they gave me my own place to stay because they were like, well, you have your spiritual practice,
Wow.
and we don't want anybody to really bother you. So you're welcome. Here's your own space, your own
Wow.
room to live in. And they just always kind of accepted it, and they just said, okay, like this is who he is. It doesn't affect his job. It doesn't affect how he performs. So what's the problem? And they just thought I was a little weird, but then everybody in the army is weird. So it's
Sure.
like there's nobody normal. So it's just levels of crazy.
By the
And
way,
so
I just want to jump in. It's a great example of like when you just say, you know what, this is what I am, you deal with it. And instead of being like, is it okay to be this? Is it okay to be that? And the world is caught in this almost like asking permission for them to be themselves. And you just sort of claimed it. And the United States Army just made space for you to practice what you want to practice unabashedly. That's very
yeah,
impressive.
well, yeah, because at that point, I think I was the only practicing Gaudiya Vaishnav in the whole U.S. military at that point.
Sure.
And I would bring up many things to the chaplain, like, why is it that you have all these other books, but you don't have the Bhagavad Gita? Like, why is it that you're not providing for me? So it would open
Did
up
you
a huge
distribute any
dialogue.
books in the Army?
Yeah, the BBT bought like 15,000. They sold 15,000 Gitas
Wait, what?
to the.
Tell me
The
that.
BBT sold
The
15,000
Bhaktivedanta Book
Gitas.
Trust, the people who
Yeah,
print Bhagavad Gitas, did what?
yeah, they sold 15,000 to the U.S. Army because no, because I made this whole thing that you can't provide for me spiritual guidance because you don't even have my book available that I follow. You have the Torah, you have the Quran, you have the Bible, you have everything, even Buddhist literature, but you have nothing for me. And
Wow.
so then they created the facility for me. They allowed me the space to engage and not just that, but also to give classes, to talk to people. It
Wow.
wasn't a hidden thing that I was like this. I was
So
very open.
so in the Army, the chaplain does multi-denominations, or is there a
Yeah.
chaplain for each religion? Okay.
No,
Did people
you have specific chaplains, like
Okay.
a Christian chaplain, but they have to provide for everyone. They
Okay. Now
might be, their specialty will be, Christian or Muslim, but they have to provide spiritual guidance for everybody.
did you the thing about devotees, and I'm looking at everybody on the Zoom screen right now, is a lot of times you practice bhakti, and whether you like it or not, people start to come ask you for questions. I think people on our Zoom board, all of a sudden, we get this position of being a chaplain or a guru or a teacher without us even asking for it. Did you find that with the other people, especially because you're going in these sort of life-threatening situations where, they say no one is an atheist in the foxhole or something like that? Do
Yeah,
people
I mean,
turn to
I
you?
had a lot. Yeah, I had a lot of conversations. I had a lot of talks. During my times deployed, I did programs, and I did like, programs in the war, and in a practical sense, like, I just showed them like this is what a Vaishnav is. A Vaishnav is, Srila Prabhupada says in the Srimad Bhagavatam that a Vaishnav is supposed to be the most liberal person on the planet, just the most accepting and loving person.
Mm,
And so for me, I took that serious, that I should have these qualities, and people should see me and see these qualities of fairness, of focus, of determination,
sure.
and of trust. So I tried my best to guide people. And there were some successful, there were some like far out things that happened, like at the time of death. There were all kinds of crazy things that happened.
Were there a lot of time of death situations?
I mean, there were a handful. I mean, there was like, yeah, there was some.
Would you share a couple
But
that are appropriate, that are that end with the would that end with a positive note, please? It's
well, I
morning
mean,
time.
I don't think you could have a positive note, but I did see people leave their bodies, in and just totally alone and focused. And, they would leave with like I had this, okay, because I was like, let me explain a little. I thought, like, what are they going to do? I'm already in Iraq. Like, what's the US government going to do to me if I just go all out? Like, what are they going to do? The worst they can do is send me home, right? Like,
Right.
that's it. Like, that's the
When you
worst they
say
can do
all
is
out, you mean all out Hare Krishna.
Yeah, like I was just like, all right. So I used to travel when I go on missions with my body armor. I would have an Ugar Nishingadev Shalagram Shila with me on it.
We're studying the Nishingadev
And
right now. So
Nishingadev,
that
yeah.
is like a stone that has like a jagged hole in it, which they call this is the Nishingadev Shila. So it's like having a deity of Lord Nishingadev that he's carrying now. I would do that too. I would carry that Nishingadev Shila with me as well. So, all right, so you're carrying this Shila with you.
But I also had like other little packet. It had like Ganga water, and it had like Radhakund water, and it had Tulsi leaves and stuff like that. So yeah, like it happened where people left there in a multiple casualty instance where people left their bodies, and I was able to put a shalagram on their head and put some Tulsi in their mouth, like right before the moment of death. And you see the peacefulness over the face, even though the language wasn't understood.
Wow.
But seeing the peacefulness that, that at the end of life, that's all everybody wants. They just want reassurance that whatever happens in their next life, whatever happens at the end is going to be positive. And so somehow Krishna used me as an imperfect vehicle to help others.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, and it wasn't just there. It was like, there was another kid who left his body and asked for initiation right before he left, and I gave it to him. I was like, again, like what's people gonna do? What is I just gave it to him.
The GBC found out you're in big trouble.
I was like,
no, that's the smartest thing you could do.
Yeah, I was like, what are they gonna do?
That's
What's
beautiful.
people gonna do to me? And so, but seeing all these people focused at the time of death, realizing that this is it, and leaving that life behind it's empowering, and it leaves an image. It leaves like a mental image in your head about how precious the gift of life is, and how precious being a Vaishnav is. Like, we have, we're learning how to prepare for death by living in a certain way.
Sure. I think a lot of times especially in Western culture, where we're not seeing war like right in front of our face, you can forget that people die. You can live a life in such a way where you've really pushed away tragedy, and you sort of live in a bubble of like, whoopee, everything's good here. And now I'm going to go on vacation on top of my good. And then where's my next? And we forget about the temporality of existence and the pain of existence and the suffering that goes on. And you are in a position where it's like, oh, I get it. It's going to be them. It's going to be me. It's going to be the guy next to me. You never know what the next moment is going to bring you.
But in all honesty, it wasn't easy because, like, during that time frame, my spiritual mentor stepped away, which left me alone in this environment with nobody to guide me, even though through the internet. So, there was that. There was.
I just want to explain what that means. So he had a spiritual teacher, but the spiritual teacher fell away, and so he's now torn. Like, what do I do? Here I am. You must feel like almost like abandoned. And you're starting to process this. Like, I think if anybody, even if they have a very normal, healthy environment, but their teacher has some struggles and they end up leaving the path, that itself is confusing. It's even exponentially more confusing when you're in the middle of a battlefield and trying to make sense of it.
Yeah, but in another sense, I because I've always been on my own, I have a feeling, or I have an idea that at one point in our spiritual lives, we have to create our own inspiration and motivation. That up until a certain point, we can depend on others to motivate us, to inspire us to continue. But at one
Nice.
point, you have to fly your own airplane. At one point, you have to be firmly fixed in faith in the process, that even if those external circumstances change, that you will continue to follow your path and not deviate.
That's a beautiful I feel like a next phase in Bhakti where, like, even if there's nobody around anywhere, I'm still a devotee of Lord Krishna, and that's all I want. And yeah, and that sometimes we have to get boosted by a community, but yeah, we have to also have that determination, like, no, this is actually what I am. This is actually what gives me joy in life. There is no hope in materialism at all. Material world is crumbling around me, and we have to really become and I think, I don't know if it's just you're born like this. Some people really, it helps to write the realizations down, because the way Maya works is we tend to forget. And it's beautiful to hear those convictions, no matter what the material world throws at you. To have that conviction is like our next phase of getting fixed in bhakti yoga and spiritual life.
Well, it's necessary. It's necessary. It's like, yeah, I've been through a lot, man. I've been through a lot in my life. Even post-military, I was in South Africa as a monk at that time. I was poisoned in South Africa.
Want to share? Want to share? Not
well,
food, not
just,
food poisoning. You mean something like
no. Somebody poisoned me, because it's just like everything else. Like somebody didn't agree and decided to take something into their own hands, and that's okay. It's all just karma being burned and things like that. But the idea is, like, nothing stops us, right? Nothing stops us. The only aspect that stops us is us. Like, we
Sure.
decide when to give up. We decide when to quit. We decide how much we want to apply the philosophy to our hearts. Like, it can be either a little bit or a lot of it, but it's up to us. Nobody can force us. Nobody can make us.
I love that. We live in a world where it's very easy to say, well, this is a triggering environment, or this is not a safe environment. Or guess what? The whole world isn't safe. It's up to me to decide if I'm going to choose to be Krishna conscious today or not be. And I can't let the situation, the environment, the people, etc. It's just like me and God. And everybody my family can walk away from me, or my friends can walk away from me. Or in your case, your teacher left. And I'm still have to be Krishna conscious. It's a beautiful sentiment and conviction. And I think from those statements of, that's just the way it is, universe, this is where I'm going. It's almost like you made that choice in the army. I'm just a devotee of Lord Krishna. Deal with it. It's like, okay, universe, you do whatever you want, but this is my connection. And to have that firm, I don't know if you have that firm from being a new devotee or not, but that is what it's going to take to make it through this crazy world of twists and turns,
Well, that's the whole idea of bhajan. The whole idea of doing bhajan, of doing deep spiritual practices, is to come to the stage of complete faith in a process, right? It's not just to simply, nowadays with social media, you see it quite often, people take selfies with, I'm chanting the holy name, and it's like, no, you're not. You're taking a selfie. Like, the whole
that's
the whole
sort of
idea
me,
is
isn't it? It's Mara. Is that me?
No.
Here
like,
I am chanting on a Japa walk.
At one point, we just have to go deeper. That's the whole idea. It's like, at one point, we have to go deeper into the ocean of bhakti to be able to get the full enjoyment out of it and sustainment out of it.
Yeah, message to the people out there. Next time you take that selfie of you chanting, right underneath it, here's me going deeper. Huh? Post that.
Yeah.
Okay. As you slide through the slides on the Instagram, here's me even going deeper. Scroll right to go deeper. And just that's my face clenched up.
But it's this superficial world that we live in, where it's like we're so focused on external practices.
Sure.
That we put no focus on the internalized practice of getting to the authentic self. That's the whole idea, is to practice Krishna consciousness so that we can figure out, like, who we really are, to get rid of all the dirt in the heart, Cheto Darpana Majjanam, cleaning the heart of all the dust and all the gunk that's there, to be able to see the natural position of us, which is the servant of all living entities.
So Prabhu, did you see a lot of people, or were you with, and were you sort of death doula-ing people as they were leaving, or was it just a one random one?
No, it was a few times. Like, it was a few times that I just happened to be there at the wrong place at the right time, and tried in some way to help them transition.
Sure.
And somehow I was used as an imperfect tool, right? With all my faults and all my crap that I deal with. And somehow Krishna allowed me to be present there so that I could help in some way, whether it is just chanting to them quickly in their ear as they go, or
Wow.
or putting a shalagram on their head, or just, you know, doing puja in the area they left in, and then sanctifying the area so it's already like pure. So
it's amazing. You know, I was just thinking, it's like, what is the karma of that person that they had to go through some material life, probably reasonably young, probably under 35, and then, you know, it could very easily be like they were some advanced spiritual person in a previous life. They had to do one more dealing with the material body again, and at the time of death, a man will come to you with a shalagram shila, put it on your put it on your head, and you'll go back. You know, you never know. We never know who we're face to face with, even though they may perform material activities. You never knew actually who you're face to face with, where you have to actually have the good fortune of someone chanting in your ear at the time of death, someone that you didn't plan for, it's a cross between having incredible position on the wheel of samsara, like now is the time, just deal with this body one more time, and also incredible mercy of the devotees who are just going out of their way to give a lot of love in a place where you should really sort of be keeping your head a lot lower and maybe being a little bit more quiet. You're just sort of going out and giving a lot of love in a tragic situation.
but that's the material world in general. Like, I remember the first time I went to India, I was flying on Air India, worst airline, but I flew on Air India.
I love it. It's like being in India in the air.
Yeah, exactly.
It's
people walking around on takeoff. It's just a wild experience.
Garbage on the floor.
Yeah,
none of the none of the TVs work.
and the stewardess was coming up and down. I was dressed as a brahmachari, you know, in saffron, and she came up and she was like, "Are you a doctor?" And I was like, looked at her. I was like, "Do I look like one?" I was like, "What happened?" And she said, "Oh, somebody died up here, and so
wow,
on the flight, somebody died, and we're not going to turn around because we're already like 6 hours into the flight, so we're just going to keep going." And then
with the body on the plane.
Yeah, they just threw it's India, it's Air India. They just threw a blanket over the body and just like, that's it. And like people were sitting on either side. It was pretty funny. And, God. And I just happened to go up there and just like, just put some Tulsi from Giriraj on them and just say like, okay, well, at least you died with like Giriraj here and Shalagram. So, Krishna always arranges these weird aspects for their Vaishnav, whether their Vaishnav is this life or from a previous life. They always arrange it. He never forgets. That's the beauty of having a relationship with him. It's one of complete appreciation and love. He doesn't say like, "What have you done for me lately?" He remembers even the smallest offering you've made from a previous life.
That's beautiful. I feel that for sure. I've even seen sometimes the opposite happens. A person goes to Vrindavan, like, I'm sick, I'm going to die. And something happens in Vrindavan where they have to go to Delhi and they leave their body in Delhi.
Yeah.
You hear those situations where it's sort of like you make a plan for it, but it's not a plan. It's not your plan. It's Krishna's plan. It's Krishna's plan depending on where your heart's at. And Krishna knows our heart, and he knows where we're cheating as well, huh?
Yeah, well, that's the whole thing is like, it all comes to understanding that I'm not the doer, that the ego is so strong that the ego says like all of my success, all of my life, everything is because of my abilities. But actually, no, it's all, who are we? We're just like a little piece of sand and grain of sand in time. And all of it emanates from Krishna. All of it comes from him. All our strengths and all of our weaknesses, everything comes from him. He's the source of everything.
Mm.
And so
I love that, a little grain of sand in time. I know we tend to think even our good fortune and even the tragic, or even the most tragic lives, and we hear about people who have lived from birth tragic lives. Even that is a grain of, it's a blink of the eye within a year of your life, perhaps. It's a blink of an eye. And we tend to, I don't, it sounds like spiritual bypassing, but it's also reality. In the bigger scheme of thing, it's a blink of an eye. And I know that because in this lifetime, so my greatest pains, trials, tribulations, losses, heartbreaks, I can't even remember anymore. And imagine that on the bigger scale of existence. This is our life. That seems so important. I got a question from Achyuta, who's listening to the show.
Sure.
Achyuta's from England. He says, many people come back from war with trauma, PTSD, from witnessing horrible things. How did Partha-sarathi Prabhu find Krishna consciousness, help him process and deal?
Well,
question.
I mean, when I got out of the army, I went straight to India, and my spiritual master, because I found a new teacher, he told me to go to South Africa and just start integrating in and educate and share Krishna with others. But you can't outrun your mental issues. Like, you can't outrun it. So, at that point, I was sleeping 45 minutes a night.
Wow.
And I was eating just a handful of food a day because I just lost all appetite. I couldn't sleep because of nightmares. And still, I tried to push on and push on and push on. And then it became really rough. Like, the suicide attempts started,
Oh my God.
all these different aspects. And it wasn't until one person grabbed me and said, "You need help," that everything started to fall into place. And, Krishna consciousness is one thing, right? Like, I remember once somebody said, "How are you doing, Partha?" And I said, "Well, I'm struggling with this." And they said, "Well, if you just chanted purely, then, your PTSD would go away right away." And I was like, yeah, like, that's like that's like a bullshit, like, thing to say to somebody. Like, no, it's a very complex, trauma is very complex, but Krishna consciousness needs to be there, but also psychological help needs to be there.
Sure.
Right? Like, they go step by step. So that's how I dealt with it. Was I had to experience the worst of it before I decided through intervention of others to get help. And then it wasn't just as simple as just getting help. It was like going to treatment like 4 days a week and doing simple service. It was actually my favorite time being a devotee back then. Because I no longer was a traveling like monk. All I did was go and clean the temple's trash cans and dishes.
Wow.
I didn't have to give classes.
Simple service. It's amazing.
Yeah, it was my favorite time. And all I did was focus on healing myself mentally. And also trying to keep my spiritual life above water.
I was speaking to Jiva G from the Bhakti Recovery Group, who's a big leader within with people who are going through 12-step issues, but tying Krishna into it, recovery issues. And she says the same thing. It's the simple service that we need when we're really struggling. What can I do simply today? I think a lot of times our thing in Bhakti is, let's just do it a little simply. Like right now, Kostuba is just worshiping his deity. You can see him over on the left there. He's just doing simple. It's that simple that service that just grounds a person. Before we started the show, I was doing my puja. Lori and Brian and Mara were just reading prayers as we were doing. It's that simple stuff. And even some stuff as simple as gardening, or just especially when it's not about you. I'm going to give this to the Lord, to the earth, to other people. We have seva retreats at the farm, and people say these are the best retreats ever. We've been to the other retreats, but just doing seva where I'm not expecting something in return. I just want to give. It's such a beautiful healing for the soul. And I'm sure it doesn't end with what you went through. I'm sure it doesn't end, and I'm sure you got to go back to basics on a regular basis.
Well, I think for me, I have taken a different route than say some people, because it's not just for me. It's not just the spiritual aspect. It's not just doing the treatment, which I still do treatment. I still talk to a psychologist on, twice a month. I still go through all these things, but then there's actually the physical aspect also, right? Like Prabhupada says, like, what is it? Health, bhajan, and health, spiritual practices. And then we can actually share what we have, right? Without having these two prongs, we can't actually understand what to share anything to people. We need to have our mental health and physical health together. And then we have to have our spiritual practice to be able to speak realizations that will actually be meaningful, not just parroting what we read or what we hear someone else say. And so that's where the other aspect came in, was like starting to do the endurance sports.
Okay, yeah, let's move towards that. So now you're an endurance runner or biker?
Yeah, I do. Well, I do a little bit of both. Like I used to do more cycling, but now I do ultra marathons, like especially the 100-mile and like 100-kilometer distance. Because I just feel like that
I just got to keep running. You just got to keep running.
Well, because I don't go with any music. I don't do any music. I don't run with anybody. I run alone always. And
that is like therapy.
That
is like therapy. You're just with your mind, and people don't get enough downtime with their mind anymore. The mind's always, it's like, okay, I have to walk around for a little bit. I'm going to just listen to podcasts the entire time. I wonder what that does to us, that we always are taking in information. We must be missing out on just self-reflection that comes with the old days of using a push mower and just walking to your car, going for a walk to your friend's house. You want to share a little bit about the therapy behind these? First of all, kudos. 300 kilometer. I can't even get my head around that. I get sore ankles as soon as I like walk up the road.
Well, I take it quite serious, like everything else, in Krishna conscious wise, health wise, and sports athletic wise. I take it quite seriously. I train like 19, 20 hours a week running. Like I run like 100 miles a week, 125 miles. Then the gym and all that. But the main thing for me is I just want to be present, because it's very easy to say like I'm a bad person. It's famous. You go to any spiritual group and they're like, oh yeah, I'm so fallen, I'm so this, I'm so that, I have such an ego. But there's a stage in Bhakti that's called a Narta Nivritti, which is like the deepest, darkest like crap in your heart. It's not it's so deep, it's so below the surface level. It's lifetimes of unhealthy behaviors.
Wow.
That affects our spiritual life and also our material life as well, our relationships with others.
Sure.
So for me, the idea of going out and running 100 miles and just being alone with that, with accepting those parts of my heart, with wading through all of that in hopes that I emerge from it with a better understanding of where I am, what I need to change, and what I need to work on. And like next week, I'm starting on a project. It's 72 hours of straight running on like a 300-mile trail from one side of the country to the other.
72 hours. When do you sleep?
Yeah.
You sleep while you're running?
I won't sleep for 72 hours. I'll stay awake. And yeah, well, I'm an extreme person.
And then I'm going to cold plunge. And then I got to walk over coals. And then I got to walk on my hands. 1 kilometer on my hands.
No, but again, it's if you look like Hiranyakashipu, it's because you're learning about your group is learning about Hiranyakashipu. Hiranyakashipu did all these austerities to please Lord Shiva to attain immortality, right?
Well, I understand where this is going. You want some mystic powers out of this.
Maybe, but maybe. No, but so it says in the Sandarbhas, which is a very ancient group of books, that austerity in the wrong consciousness can create a heart that is made of stone.
I believe
but austerity austerity created in a correct consciousness can make a heart soft like butter.
Okay, Mara, I got to get my act together. He's running for 3 days nonstop. Can you make sure I at least walk to get the mail today?
I'll make sure you get your 10,000 steps today.
And that's still something.
Imagine how many steps
something.
he gets. I hope you check your step count. It's got to be
You know?
ridiculous.
So it's like everything else. In my life, I'm almost 50. Everything now is trying to be with consciousness.
Now I hate myself.
So the idea,
I got to get off this podcast. You're almost 50. I thought it was like maybe he's 35. That's reasonable. No, he's almost 50. I have no excuse, Mara. You're just feeding me these vegan meatballs. I'm just getting plumper and plumper. He's running barefoot in hot sand for 3 days straight, showering in the rain only.
No, wow. But again, it's the idea. The idea is that we have to do things with consciousness behind it. It's everything is with consciousness. Like my relationship with my partner is because I decided I've never had a healthy relationship in my life. My parents were in a healthy relationship. I was abused. Like I've never had like a healthy romantic relationship. It's always been like very toxic and very unhealthy. But so I figured at one point, if I don't ever experience a healthy romantic relationship, how can I have a healthy relationship with Krishna if I've never experienced that? Then it's just a relationship of a toxic relationship based on fear, based on guilt, based on all these issues that I have. So as we get older, the whole point of my ranting, I guess, is as we get older, at one point we have to actually become conscious of the activities we're doing and connect them in some way to Krishna, because otherwise it just stays a theoretical process the advancement is very minimal.
Love that. I love that.
Hope it makes sense. Maybe not.
It makes total sense. Wow. What's your next running thing? We're running out of time here, but I'm just curious. What's your next adventure?
My next adventure is I leave on the 24th at 4 a.m. and I start running the Pieterpad. It's a traverse of the country of the Netherlands from north to south. And the idea is because it's Nishingadev's appearance weekend. So the idea is to just do austerity in the idea of lifting the heart out of the material suffering and understanding who I am better in every aspect, as a partner, as a father, as a Vaishnav, and as a person.
So nice. Now, you're doing this alone. You got a team of other devotees with you, other ultra runners? Just you.
It's just me.
What do you eat? What are you eating?
I have like
gels?
Very good vegan gels, like very good like nutrition. Have a nutrition plan. Again, I take everything very seriously. So I have like a coach. I have a nutrition plan. I'll have some like vegan burgers somewhere in there just to have some real food. And there's one person that's helping me, and but I'll only meet them every 30 miles. All
right. I'm going to go do some push-ups right now. I just feel like I've got to do something today. But I want to thank you for joining us. It's been really enlightening. The message board has been lighting up, but your story has, it's inspired us. It's given us some, it's great to hear people in all different walks of life share their strength, their hopes, their passions to move forward in their spiritual life. And thanks for being on board. If people want to reach out to you, what's the best way to reach out to you? What's your, you got Instagram address?
Yeah, it's Slower Than You Crew.
Slower Than You Crew. Slower Than You Crew. That's the Instagram. Thanks for all your inspiration, Prabhu. Thanks for joining us this morning. I know you had to jump through a couple hoops.
No, it's totally okay. Thank you so much.
A big Hari Bol. Everybody else, thank you for joining us. What a great interview today. Shout out for my book, Punk to Monk. If you didn't get it, you got to get it. If you got it once, double that. Share it with people. Kastuba, how are you?
I just wanted to Thank God. That was wonderful. You know, I just really feel in his words, you know, this it's like realization is truth, you know, it's strong. It's really pure. I really
Oh, thank you.
Thanks, Kastubaji. Thanks for everybody for joining us today. And tomorrow we're back on at 7 a.m. We're gearing up for the Wisdom of the Sages retreat at Super Soul Farm. Hey, if you haven't signed up, there might be a space. Email the message on, email us at wisdomofthesages.com/events. But otherwise, we're excited to have everybody on board for great kirtan. And we're going to have Seth come up. Seth Lieberman's going to come up. And then, of course, we're going to have this special night with Madhava on the 6th, right before New York Rath Yatra, the Thursday before New York Rath Yatra. You're invited to come up for an evening of Prashad and Kirtan at Super Soul Farm. We're all heading to Rath Yatra, right? There's Friday, Saturday, Sunday. We're going to have a table set up, and we're going to be chanting. We want everybody to make some cookies and distribute some cookies at Rath Yatra. You got to make cookies, no eggs, right? No eggs in your cookies. No eggs, no meat in your cookies either, guys. No meat, and especially no fish in your cookies. We're going to make some cookies, and you're going to offer them with love and devotion, and we're going to distribute them at the Wisdom of the Sages table at New York Rath Yatra, and we're going to show up in force, chanting the holy name. That's been going on for thousands of years, and we're doing it now in 2024. Partha-sarathi Prabhu, Haribol. Beautiful day for a beautiful day, everybody. Let the magic continue to flow in a big Haribol.